Hello and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Yesterday in Baseball. My name is Luke and today we've got a great show for you guys. We had our first free agent signing of the offseason this past week as Josh Naylor inked a 5-year deal to stay with Seattle. It's expected to be in the ballpark of $90 to $100 million for the deal. You know, he seems like a great fit there after the trade deadline. They've been needing a first baseman for years and he was just the perfect guy for that. I know they mentioned that they're still out in the market for some elite back-end pitching to help kind of secure that bullpen, but I'll be interested to see if they're in the market for any of their bats, potentially via trade or through free agency, because they'll lose Eugenio Suarez, who they traded for at the deadline last year, and he was pretty solid. We've got a great show for you guys. We're going to get into some World Baseball Classic news and notes, and then do our end-of-season grade for the Baltimore Orioles. So like I said, we're going to get into the World Baseball Classic here. I'm going to lead it off with just something I didn't really know until yesterday. I was reading about it, is what players have to do to be allowed to play in the competition. And then we'll cover some of the new commitments and storylines happening. So starting off, like I said, any player that's on an MLB 40-man roster has to essentially get permission to play in the tournament. And they do this by going to an insurance company that basically does a view of their past medical history and does a physical and can deem if they're insurable or not. If they're insurable, that means they're allowed to go play, and if they get hurt, their MLB salary is covered. And if they're uninsurable, then if they go and play and they get hurt, they're not covered. So, for example, Ohtani, last time he played in the World Baseball Classic, he only had one Tommy John surgery. But now that he's had a second, there's a chance he could go and they could say that he's uninsurable, meaning that he wouldn't be allowed to play. Clayton Kershaw's had this exact situation happen to him. He's wanted to play for years for Team USA, but he's been too injury prone for them to deem him insurable, so he hasn't been able to play, unfortunately. So now onto some news from Team USA out of this past week. We saw Corbin Carroll and Pete Crow Armstrong commit to playing for Team USA. Now, so far, we have Cal Raleigh, Paul Skeens, Bobby Witt Jr., Corbin Carroll, Pete Crow Armstrong, and Aaron Judge all committed to play for Team USA, looking like a pretty stacked lineup so far. Now in the news from Samurai Japan, it's looking like the Dodgers Japanese stars will be facing some pushback when trying to compete in the WBC. When asked about it, Dave Roberts said, "The WBC is an important tournament. Whether they play or not is up to the players, and we will support them. But we would prefer that pitchers not participate if possible. Sasaki just came back from injury. Yamamoto threw a lot of innings, and Ohtani also logged many innings while returning from injury." Now, from my understanding, I would assume that Ohtani, Yamamoto would both have stipulations in their contracts allowing them to go play for Japan no matter what. But what I did read is that these MLB teams have the ability to impose pitch limits on these guys, so that it could be like, okay, well, Yamamoto can't throw more than 20 pitches in a game. And like I said earlier, it's worth mentioning that Ohtani has gotten a second Tommy John surgery since the last WBC. Yamamoto is the highest paid pitcher in the history of the game, and Sasaki was injured for a good chunk of 2025 and has had frequent health injuries in his career. I believe, though, if the Dodgers end up discouraging these Japanese stars, it'll greatly damage their reputation, as they've been a massive landing spot for international talent over the years, and especially Japan lately. Given what these players have given to the Dodgers organization, for them to be discouraging them from representing their country, in what's becoming an event that's more important than the World Series for many of these players, just seems wrong to the players and wrong to the game of baseball. And the WBC has lacked star power for many years for reasons like this. It was beautiful in 2023 seeing it come down to two of the best players of this generation facing off for the world title. And it'd be a shame if the Dodgers tried to take that away from us as baseball fans. And a shame that they're trying to minimize this competition that's so important to so many people all over the world. You've just won back-to-back championships. You can let your guys go out and play in a 10-game tournament. So again, we'll see what happens, but I was even reading myself from Dodger fans that they wanted to see these guys compete in the WBC. And the Dodgers, they've just kind of got an embarrassment of riches right now. And in my mind, it would be stupid on their part, business-wise, to not let them play. And just unfair to these players. Now we have our end-of-season grade for the Baltimore Orioles. Like many of the teams we've covered so far, they had an underwhelming season. After many mediocre seasons since 2016, They came into 2025 with lots of momentum as they had an above 500 finish in each of the previous 3 seasons and 2 postseason appearances, even though they're yet to win a postseason game with this new core. But coming into the year, they lost some pieces like Corbin Burns, Anthony Santander, John Means, and more, and the front office did little to address these departures. Coming into the year, pitching was a glaring hole in their roster, and unfortunately, the 26th ranked team ERA was what they had to show for it. It wasn't all doom and gloom in Baltimore though. Despite having the rough year, they finished a decent 75-87. Not great, especially considering expectation, but certainly could have been worse with their pitching. Trevor Rogers was incredible once he returned from injury, pitching to a 1.81 ERA across 109.2 innings and putting up 5.5 WAR in the process. Gunnar Henderson took a small step back, but he still put up 5.3 WAR, showing you that he's truly got an incredibly high floor. And it turned around somewhat in the second half as their pitching got close to average. They played close to 500 ball after the break, putting up winning months in June, July, and September. On the downside, the pitching staff, like stated earlier, was abysmal. They improved in the second half, but was still below average all season and ended up there. There's also concerns with Adley Rutschman, as there's been concern about his lack of production across the last 2 seasons now, and he's been unable to reach the levels of success he had back in his rookie season. This year was the first time he put up below average offensive numbers, as he's had a 90 OPS plus once it was all said and done. As a whole, this offense was lackluster, as they were 24th ranked in baseball at the end of the year. I know the pitching was a real issue, but the offense was a sneaky big problem for them too. Overall, in my opinion though, the biggest issue was the lack of response from the front office to fill in these holes when the big stars left. Losing these guys like Burns and Santander when they both had an incredible year the year prior, and the O's barely made the playoffs, was kind of a recipe for disappointment. They only had 91 wins in 24. So it's a solid young core, but it's getting to be not that young anymore, and they're going to start getting paid and making money. It's going to be harder for them to bring in free agents in the future. So they've already lost out on some prospect capital as well to bring in those big names. So it's kind of disappointing for me to see them waste a year of opportunity because they weren't more aggressive last offseason. This core, won't be around forever though. They need to turn around to give them a serious shot heading into 2026. But for this season, I give them an F grade. I know an F might be pretty harsh there, but much of that grade is aimed towards the front office and is relative to the expectation of the recent years. It just seems like they've wasted, like I said, that year of opportunity to compete for the division and even the American League. And between the players all seemingly underperforming, the front office's struggles to just construct a solid roster, I want to give them the lowest score I can give, because that just should be unacceptable and shouldn't happen with a team like this in a window like they have. So unfortunately for them, it's going to have to turn it around heading into next offseason. They could pull a Corbin Burns trade again and go get Skubal or someone. I know there was talks about that in some of the previous years back in 2024, but something's going to have to change because that AL East is pretty brutal right now. So that's everything from Tuesday's show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed the content. No worries if not. Like I said, not a ton to talk about this offseason yet. The hot stove isn't quite cooking. Really excited for those winter meetings because that'll be a lot of action every day. But Josh Naylor kind of got the stuff cooking a little bit. And you know me, I love the WBC, so I'm excited to get to that this spring and kind of cover all those commitments this offseason. So I can't wait for that. So see you guys on Friday. Maybe look out for a little midweek episode as well thrown in there potentially. But hope to see you guys again on Friday. Have a great rest of your week and take care. Thanks for listening.